But I do think there's a non-insignificant possibility that he can catch Crawford on the exit or catch him in exchanges, and I think there's a non-insignificant possibility that when he does so, he can hurt Crawford. And when he tries to get up, the referee waves it off, 6-round TKO. But with some fighters, I say there are barriers to entry. Before we talk, as always, please hit that like button. Also subscribe, because this weekend we're going to do a lot of breakdowns for the fights. There's a lot of fights going on this weekend. So get down in the comment section. Give me your specific prediction for how you see this fight turning out and why. Now let's talk science with the simulation at the end. I'm just looking at some important tendencies, habits, patterns that are likely going to carry over into the fight. And Madrimov, as we talked about in his previous breakdown, he really likes the jab to the body, but versus southpaws, he does throw the jab to the body. He also throws the cross to the body, which is what he throws right here. So he likes to level change and throw a lot of body shots because the level change is an essential key piece for his offense. The problem is when we look at that cross to the body, that left hand is away from the chin. And as we've seen in some of Crawford's recent fights, or his most recent fight, that's a dangerous thing to pull off against Crawford. In fact, Crawford became undisputed because he's an expert in countering those type of attacks. You see Porter very similar, except this is a jab to the body, but the jab to the body, cross to the body is the same issue, southpaw and orthodox. He steps in, Crawford sees the opening over top. Now Porter closes the distance really fast, so he's not able to get that cross out in time, but Madrimov is going to have some different issues. On top of that, if he expects and prepares for and sees a consistent level change, particularly for entries, he's going to start establishing counters very fast. He had the hook to the jab, countering Porter's entry with the jab to the body, and if he sees that level change, that uppercut is also going to come. It seems like when Madrimov is facing southpaws, he does like to throw either left hooks to the body or jabs to the body. He try and level change, get underneath the southpaw jab or probe. Consistent body punch entries, especially early, would give Crawford too much data and he would start adapting too quickly. Now the smart thing for Madrimov to do would mix up his entries, mix up the shot selection, and not constantly throw those shots, and really work off a lot of feints. Here's another response Madrimov shows to the southpaw jab. Not just getting underneath it with body shots, but also waiting for it to come out. You see how patient he is. He's feinting, and then as soon as he gets that jab, he dips that head to the outside and then uses his feet to try and get around at that angle. And he does that quite often. If Madrimov is trying to get around that jab or the lead hand of Crawford, he's going to have a tough time, and I'll show you an example of why. I do think for the best look of a somewhat similar style matchup, even with some shot selection, and we'll look at that later, Shawn Porter is a good look for a few reasons. Shawn Porter does a lot of the same things that Madrimov does, but Shawn Porter is also very fast and athletic. Well, one of the faster opponents Crawford ever faced from all of his weight classes, if we're being honest. And he's much faster than Madrimov, but he's also not as powerful, so that's a big difference. And as he's throwing that cross, he steps around, he tries to get this angle around the lead shoulder. Crawford turns with him, and in frame by frame, it doesn't look fast, but in full speed, they're turning fast. It's a lot of quick movement, so Crawford's definitely going to be able to turn with him and get away from shots and avoid any of those attempted angle takes from Madrimov. I think early on, especially if Madrimov is trying to condition Crawford with the body jab or the body cross, if he's able to condition Crawford with all the level changes, I do think he can jump in with some of those leaping hooks. Don't know how effective they'll be. I don't know how surprising they'll be, because again, Shawn Porter's faster, but Madrimov does put in more work to surprise his opponents with those types of shots. Now, I think a part of Bud's game that's going to be on full display here is his back foot counterpunching ability while moving back and his opponent on the attack. And you see Shawn Porter working off the level change just like Madrimov. And pay attention to what Shawn Porter does right there too. He jumps in, uses the lead hand to kind of like measure and guide the entry, also gets underneath the shot, but Crawford isn't just backing up and escaping. He's looking for shots in the process, which is extra dangerous if someone's falling in like Porter, and because now they're running into landmines on their way in, and then Crawford tries to turn away from that shot. But Porter can close the distance with Crawford because he's very, very fast. Now, if there were one of two areas where I think Madrimov could find his most consistent success and be very dangerous, it would be in exchanges like this, probably inside mid-range, where he's likely able to handle Crawford's power better than a lot of Crawford's previous opponents. And as a 154 pounder with some good knockouts, Crawford may not be able to handle his power as much. And so if Crawford gets into these exchanges, he's putting himself in a lot of danger with someone like Madrimov. But that's just my assumption about the chins and being able to handle power. Now, I think there'll be a lot of sequences like this. Madrimov trying to close the distance, shots side to side, high-low combos, and we talked about that in the previous Madrimov breakdown. Crawford trying to escape it while also throwing counters and turning. He's not just moving straight backwards, that's if you move straight backwards versus Madrimov, you likely will get lined up. So if Crawford does move straight backwards, he's going to be in trouble, but I don't think he will. He's going to be turning. He's not just counter punching, but he's turning, shifting the angles while punching, and that's going to make their exchanges very interesting. Because Madrimov throws the jab to the body so much, he can use that lead hand to kind of disguise and guide his entry. That's what he does right here. As he's entering, he throws out that lead hand. It's not meant to land. It's just meant to back his opponent up against the corner and set up that right hand. And we saw Porter do something very similar earlier, and we saw how Crawford reacted. Now, this is a key sequence, and this is probably one of the most important tools by far. That's not even a weapon. It's just something that might disturb Madrimov, because Madrimov is he has a weird rhythm, but he has his own rhythm. And when he's establishing his rhythm, when he's constantly moving and twitching, shifting from guard to guard, that's when he's able to be most successful. And so what disrupts that is these probes that his opponent is constantly putting out. There's another one. Backs him up, stifles him, makes him react. Here comes another one right here. Probe, just constantly disrupting. And you see that he's having trouble closing the distance or starting off with any offense. Another one, just throwing him off. Another one, just throwing him off, backing him up. And then finally he has to react in some sort of way. He has to close the distance, and he gets real aggressive and jumps in there. And again, when he jumps in, hands down, and in that position, if Crawford was backing up, what it might look like is that Crawford might back up in the first couple rounds, but then he's going to start looking for the shot, and then it's slowly going to come to where he plants after he backs up a certain distance and lands a counter over the top of those type of attacks. But I think the probes are going to be very crucial, because they're going to frustrate Madrimov and force him to, or make him do some things that wouldn't be smart, like closing the distance like this, for example. If Madrimov is jumping to close the distance and stepping through, I think combos like this are the ones that could surprise Bud, catch him, even possibly hurt him if they're landing super clean. But like that swivel jab right there, I think that could be one of his best shots. Jumping, turning over with the jab, but not allowing Crawford to get away with just escaping single shots, stepping through with full combos, especially if he corners Crawford, backing him up with several shots at once. And I think he actually shows a little bit of an underrated back foot counter punching ability himself, Madrimov does. And so if Crawford is getting overly aggressive, I think Crawford could actually get caught with some counters. And so if Crawford walks him down, that's something he would have to watch out for as well. Again, when he jumps in to close the distance, lead hand goes out for a feint because he was working the jab to the body, and it allows him to step in, take big chunks of range, so he can close the distance and land a bigger shot at the end of all of those feints. And on top of that, his opponent is moving into the right power hand of Madrimov. It's also important to note, at times, if that jab is thrown consistently enough, he will try and find some counters. So he kind of does what he talked about, where he gets that head outside of the lead shoulder, except where he doesn't try and step around and take the angle. This time he just tries to line up with a lead uppercut. Madrimov steps through with the cross. As he does, he jumps over top with the swivel jab, and we're going to see some reactions of Crawford to similar type of combos. In this particular example, Crawford actually feints out this response from Porter. He's going to take a little bit of a step, use that lead hand to bring out a reaction from Porter. Porter steps in, throws the cross, and then tries to come over top with the left hook. But again, Bud's not just moving straight back. He's turning, he's shifting at angles, using his feet, turning his shoulder, getting away from shot. And then on top of that, he's also lining up counters at the same time. So while those combos, here's the thing about those combos from Madrimov, they can be the bane or the boon. They can be the way he gets finished or the way he finishes Crawford. It's a very dangerous, risky tactic, but that's how he fights. So I think that swivel jab and Madrimov waiting for the right hook counter of Bud to try and come over top with a left hook or a swivel jab like that, I think that could be an important shot to look out for as well. Again, I personally think the two biggest opportunities for Madrimov to catch Crawford are going to be on the exit, which he catches a lot of people on the exit because he jumps into shots and they're trying to back up and he catches them backing up, or in exchanges because the power he might be able to carry might be too much for Crawford. But the speed though is what gave Crawford so much trouble with Sean Porter, and Madrimov obviously isn't as fast as Sean Porter. However, he does have power and he is around Crawford's size, so that makes things a little bit more equal. But I can't overstate the importance of speed, which I'm going to talk more about in the simulation. This is actually kind of a good example of both. This is also an exchange, but it's also as Crawford is trying to back up and he didn't properly calculate range. But then on top of that, it's also what I said, countering the right hook of Crawford, which Crawford is going to be trying to use to counter his lead hand. And so if Madrimov can get inside of that shot and surprise Crawford, I think that could be, I just think that this type of moment is the type of moment to look out for in the fight. But we talked about Madrimov dipping his head to the outside shoulder and then using his feet to pivot around. But you can see that his opponent right here catches up with him and tries to counter him but misses. And so I think Crawford is absolutely going to be able to turn with this, and I think he's going to adapt to this because this is a pretty consistent habit. And just 1 second later, he does the same thing again, ducks that head, turns around that lead shoulder, but his opponent has seen enough of that to where he's turning with him and is expecting him to be there. Okay, let's get down to the important part, the simulation. Let's talk. As the fight starts, I think you're going to get a lot of lead hand probes from Crawford. That's going to be true in orthodox, but it's going to be even more true when he switches to southpaw. And he's going to be using those probes from range to constantly disturb any type of rhythm that Madrimov is going to try and establish. Madrimov is built off of at least two massive pieces that are consistent in his game: the constant twitchy movements that distract and open up opportunities for the rest of his offense, and the level changes. And we'll talk more about the level changes later. Now, the probes are going to throw that part of his game off, his twitchy kind of like movement and him shifting from guard to guard, but they're also going to elicit reactions, and Crawford's going to be studying those reactions. In the process of Madrimov in these early rounds is going to be trying to get to Crawford. He's going to be testing how Crawford reacts to the body jabs and the body crosses. So he is going to be throwing a lot of those straight punches to the body, and he might bring a few of those shots up and catch Crawford using that level change that we talked about. And he's going to see if he can get around Crawford's lead shoulder, especially when Crawford turns southpaw. I think Madrimov is going to be more active and aggressive when Crawford is in orthodox. In those early rounds, like round 1 and 2, it will be competitive, if not favor Madrimov. Here's the key: Crawford is going to be setting up multiple potential fight-ending shots from the first bell. It could be uppercuts when he ducks that head low. It could be hooks when he steps in with the jab or crosses over top. He's going to be developing these fight-ending shots in those first couple rounds, and they will develop as the fight evolves. But at the same time, it shouldn't be understated that Madrimov has shown the ability to evolve subtle aspects of his game as the fight continues. I think he has a little bit of an underrated IQ. He's definitely going to start looking for shots off of that level change and try and touch Crawford's chin. We get into round 3 and 4, but it's almost certainly a southpaw Crawford by this point. And that's where things really start to change. Bud is working more combos and catching Madrimov as Madrimov tries to enter, and Bud is backing up and turning with shots, catching him as Madrimov is trying to get to him. Madrimov tries to up the pressure to compensate for those issues. But I do think the counters will slow down Madrimov's activity, and the probes will just throw him off even more. But Madrimov will start trying to get around the probes and get underneath the probes, and he will try to counter the lead hand of Crawford, which is constantly going to be in his face and upsetting him. However, those shots like the uppercuts, the hooks, the crosses over top that were grazing or missing or not landing too well in the first couple rounds, they're going to be landing more often in rounds 3 and 4, and they're going to have a little bit more impact. When we get into those 5th and 6th rounds, in that 5th round, Madrimov is really trying to regain some control over the fight as Crawford took control of the rhythm and the pace. And Now Madrimov is trying to up his output, working behind the jab, and the jab is actually surprising Crawford, but Crawford starts controlling the distance even more, and Crawford slows down because Madrimov, ever since the up and aggression, he's touching Bud more because Madrimov is willing to take some shots to give some shots. So he's stepping in and getting caught, but he's also trying to trade at the same time. So this 5th round is a lot more competitive. Subsequently, when they come out in that 6th round, things change. Bud really pulls back his output, but ups with the probes and feints. So he's doing a lot more of non-offensive things to set up bigger offensive things down the line. And he's trying to bring Madrimov in. He's baiting him. He's jumping back a lot. Bud he's keeping a distance. He's using his length. He's trying to bring Madrimov in. That's what he's doing. He wants him out of position. And after a bunch of body jabs and crosses to the body, Madrimov finally jumps in off of a level change and tries to throw a big shot. Could be a combo, could be a leaping left, but regardless, that's exactly what Crawford wanted. That's what he was setting up for the first round. Crawford steps back, creates space. Madrimov overextends, is out of position, hands not where they're supposed to be. Crawford counters with a combo, probably a temple shot and a shot to the chin mixed in there, right hook, left uppercut, a couple different things he'd have to hit Madrimov with. Madrimov goes down in the 6th round. He gets up, looks mostly fine, but Crawford comes from the neutral corner. Madrimov kind of stands there in the high guard. He tries to counter Bud coming in. He might land a couple of shots as Bud is approaching, but Madrimov gets off, or Bud gets off the combos and puts Madrimov down again. When he tries to get up, the referee waves it off. 6th round TKO or knockout for Crawford. That's my fight simulation. Now, let's talk about why. That may seem like an extreme prediction or a one-sided prediction to a certain extent, but with some fighters, I say there are barriers to entry. And what I mean by that is there's a certain level of some attributes you have to have in order to even make the fight competitive in the first place. And I don't think Madrimov is lacking massively, but he is lacking enough speed that Crawford is going to have a pretty easy time establishing his counterpunching game. The reason why you have to be fast, the reason why speed is so important versus Crawford is because he's a master of timing. And so when someone has a lot of speed, it can throw off your timing, and then subsequently you can throw off Crawford. But if someone is a little bit too slow, they run into issues. Especially if they make mistakes along the way in being slow. So yeah, on top of that speed advantage, Madrimov consistently puts himself in bad positions where he's cleanly open for counter shots. And the only way Madrimov doesn't get finished within the first half of the fight is if his chin is impeccable, or here's an alternative way he could win. If he can establish a strong foundation of feints and switch up his approaches, maybe even switch stances, I think he can throw Crawford off and close the distance and surprise Crawford with especially some of those combos and that swivel jab over top, catching Crawford trying to back up, catching him as he's turning. And if Crawford gets into too many exchanges, I think there's also a lot of opportunities to hurt Crawford there. I don't see a way for Madrimov to win a decision. I don't think he's a good enough boxer to do that, in my opinion. But I do think there's a non-insignificant possibility that he can catch Crawford on the exit or catch him in exchanges. And I think there's a non-insignificant possibility that when he does so, he can hurt Crawford. And I think he'll probably catch him with the lead hand, if it's anything, that left hand. Yeah, swivel jab, left hook, jumping in, surprising him, catching Crawford on top of the ear or the temple, take his legs away, and then he finishes him in that situation. I think those are the pathways for Madrimov's potential victory. But I say 80-20 probability. Crawford should win by TKO in those middle rounds, in my opinion. If it goes to decision, I would expect him to at least drop Madrimov once. But Madrimov's chin could be a massive X factor here. If he's able to stomach Crawford's power, this gives him a different level of chance in this fight, and it lowers the probability of Crawford winning the way I see him winning. Get down in the comments, share your thoughts. As always, I always want to hear your thoughts. I always want to read the comments, respond to them, hit that like button like I said in the beginning, and subscribe. I will see you soon. I'm out.